Hello, hello, it is Lynx here, and today I will be reading Chapter 5 of The Taste of Music on Your Tongue by Strawberries Banana 2 on AO3. It's been a while, so I'm just going to go back over some of the things. It's rated general audiences, and there is some graphic depictions of violence, but not yet. It'll happen at some point, though, because of course it does. But anyways, let's get into some of this. Chapter 5. Go on a hike, they said. Summary. Sunlight glints off his hair, and it's so unfair. I'm supposed to be annoyed, but it's hard to be mad at someone so radiant. Izuku's playful glare softened into something he won't admit, and the other was too cowardly to address. The mud is sticky, but so is he, if the dirt sticking to his clothes was anything to go by. Every step was a reminder that I'm never getting ahead. Stupid, pretty blondes. Alright, so there's some songs for this chapter, which means I guess I'm gonna have to sing. Well, I'm scared. So there's Dear Arkansas Daughter by Lady Lamb, Let Me Put My Love Into You by AC/DC, and Looking Up by Paramore. And this is 7,000 words. Jiro's car smells of paint. Don't ask why, Izuku already tried. Jiro just laughed in his face. Rude. To say Izuku was nervous for this hike would be a giant understatement. He's terrified. Or maybe that's just his anxiety talking. It's obvious he wasn't meant to come on this trip in the first place. He already felt bad intruding, and now he was making them pick him up and drop him off as well? Wow, he always ended up being an inconvenience, didn't he? It was easy to take 2 cars instead of 4, but Izuku's brain refuses to acknowledge that for some reason. After the picnic at the lake, the rest of the week had passed with flying colors. His life had taken itself back a notch, staying on the less eventful side for the following week. Izuku had continued his routines like usual, attending photo shoots, promoting brands, heading to the gym for some desperately awaiting workouts, and keeping in touch with his friends and family. Everything stayed peaceful, until last Thursday. You see, Izuku had been thinking about his new friends constantly, wondering if they'd actually contact him again. Maybe it was just a fluke. Maybe Ochako just wanted him to meet them, but not actually join the group, or something. Maybe Kirishima had just been nice when he had invited Izuku along on their hiking trip. Maybe Izuku had been the one to ask him about his weekend after all. However, all those thoughts had been proven wrong once Kirishima called Izuku come Thursday night, asking if he was still joining them on the hike that Saturday. Izuku had accepted, and they had actually ended up talking for way longer than either had anticipated. Izuku felt relieved that they were still friends, and Kirishima was as amiable as when they first met. After learning that they were planning on taking 2 cars, Jiro and Bakugo's, Izuku became a little doubtful. 1, because he did not want to be alone in a car with Katsuki, for obvious reasons, and 2, they were already being so generous by letting him tag along, he really didn't want to cause any more trouble. Call him a doormat and a suck-up, or whatever. At least he tries to be helpful. It's now 10:30 a.m. on Saturday, and Jiro had ended up picking him up. Thank God it wasn't Bakugo. Seeing his tense state, she attempted to make some small talk, even though Izuku could see just how much she wanted to rip her own skin off at the awkwardness. They actually had a decent conversation once Izuku started relaxing around her. She was easy to talk to. He had found that they all were. She was usually pretty quiet. He had noticed the way she sat at the outskirts of the group, only contributing to conversations when she had something important to say. Izuku focuses on the soft music Jiro's radio was playing in the background to wash away his anxiety. November Rain by Guns N' Roses plays softly through the loud, graveling car. Izuku hums along to the nostalgic rhythm. He used to hear this song all the time when he and his mother would visit his grandparents' house in the spring. It's been a while since we visited them. I wonder if they're still happy and healthy. I'll just ask Mom next time I talk to her. Izuku glances out the window while still maintaining his conversation about band march with Jiro. He can roughly see a landscape of mountains ahead of them. He tries to pick out the one they are about to climb, but it's impossible considering they all look the same at this distance. Birds fly overhead. There's hundreds of them, all in a flock, neatly soaring towards the mountain peaks. It's beautiful here, Izuku thinks. What's your favorite song? Izuku's question cuts through the dull conversation like a razor blade. He can feel Jiro's eyes look over at him in confusion. She remains silent for a couple seconds, and Izuku briefly wonders if she wasn't going to answer. Music is very important to her, after all. But when she does, Izuku's a little surprised by her response. Dear Arkansas Daughter by Lady Lamb, if I had to choose, I guess. Izuku turns to look at her, the idea forming in his head as a smile slowly spreads across his face. Let's put it on. Jiro gives him a skeptical look and fumbles to grab her phone, clumsily trying to hook her Spotify up to the car's radio in a hurry. Izuku doesn't miss the giddy smile on her face as she hands him her phone to play whatever he likes. He watches her smile as the beginning of Dear Arkansas Daughter by Lady Lamb starts to play through the car speakers. They don't hesitate to sing along, their voices clashing together unceremoniously as they fail to sing at the same pace. But neither care, as they blast music and roll down their windows, feeling the cool wind on their cheeks and ruffling in the air. This is what bonding looks like. Take a swim in the water. Take a swim in the water. Dear Arkansas daughter. You with the dark curls, you with the watercolor eyes. You who bears all your teeth in every smile. He says, I can always hear you sing, I want to hear you speak to me. While a stranger braids my hair back out on the street. And in your dreams we are shooting at snakes. And while you were asleep, I was surely awake. They finally pull into the trail's parking lot, scoring Jiro's car into a space right beside the entrance sign. The area is surrounded by tall trees, while piles of wet orange and maroon leaves litter the damp concrete lot. It had rained overnight, so there were a couple of puddles filling up the cracks in the road. Izuku shook away the childish wish to stomp in them, to feel the cool water seep in through the holes in his shoes. Jiro recognizes Bakugo's car a few spots away from theirs, pointing out the fact that they must have arrived before them, considering they had left at around the same time. Izuku is too elated to dwell on the dread that fills his stomach at Katsuki's name. The last 20 minutes had been such a blast as they sang their favorite songs and laughed until their stomachs ached. Izuku hadn't had that much fun for a very, very long time. Both him and Jiro step out of the car and walk over to the chatting figures waiting beside the entryway. The crisp June air ruffled his hair as they walked. Izuku shivered, crossing his arms tightly around his middle to warm himself up slightly. Izuku's anxiety spikes once more. He takes deep breaths to regulate himself. He will not make a fool out of himself today. Keep it together, Izuku. Perhaps Katsuki will be in a better mood in the name of having a good time? Bakugo was the first to spot them as they walked over. Izuku's heart sank at the enormous side-eye he gave him the second they rounded the corner. Perhaps not, then. Izuku silently contemplates walking back to the car and staying in there until Jiro was done and could drive him back. Of course he would still be pissed. Of course. It was Katsuki. He should have known better than to hope. He really could not deal with the snide comments and the getting under his skin today. Making Izuku contemplate even more, Kirishima gives him a look of pure rainbows and sparkles, clearly pleased to see them. When is that man ever not happy? He bounces over to them, full of energy. Izuku files away new information into the back of his brain. Never, ever give Eijiro Kirishima caffeine, unless you want the guy to explode. Hey guys, you got here okay? Jiro nods, answering for the both of them. Izuku looks past Kirishima at Katsuki, standing a few feet behind him, looking as uninterested as ever. Izuku freezes when they make brief eye contact, then proceeds to look away, cheeks flushing. Deku. The blonde greets reluctantly. Izuku bites back a sigh. Bakugo, long time no see. He deadpans, already feeling irritation set in his jaw. Jiro gives the pair a tired look, while Kirishima glances between the two of them warily, as though he's scared they'll jump each other at any given moment. You two aren't gonna be a problem, right? Jiro asks, while her gaze is mainly on Bakugo. Her eyes flicker shortly to Izuku as well. He deflates instantly, knowing he's also half the problem. Yeah, guys, we're here to have a good time. Please just pretend to get along, for my sake at least. Eijiro begs. Katsuki rolls his eyes, but reluctantly drops his shoulders, probably knowing just how much these hiking trips mean to him. Of course. Izuku reassures him with a gentle smile. Bakugo and I will get along just fine. Jiro snorts disbelievingly, and Katsuki just huffs and shoves his hands in his pockets before mumbling a quiet, whatever, under his breath. But neither say anything more, and Izuku counts that as a success. We going or what? Bakugo mutters, already heading down the path. Typical, he doesn't even wait for the rest of them. Jiro sighs, readjusting her pant leg. Guess that's our cue, she says, falling into step behind him. Kirishima chuckles, slinging his bag over his shoulder. Yeah, let's get going before Bakubro starts yelling about the clouds or something. Jiro laughs ahead of them, and Kirishima heads after her, still grinning. Katsuki scowls, sending Kirishima a death glare over his shoulder. After a second of hesitation, Izuku follows. Dry leaves crunching beneath his trainers, Izuku ended up hanging a little behind the group. He had his hands in his sweatpants pockets, his head tilted towards the sky as they walked. Izuku found himself looking at everything, from bushes to colorful flowers he'd never seen before to birds flying overhead, desperate to soak in as much as possible. His eyes were everywhere but the ground, causing him to stumble over small rocks and twigs beneath his feet more times than he'd like to admit. Although his gaze annoyingly seemed to always want to wander back to the angry blonde stomping ahead of them. Katsuki looked frustrated as he walked a couple meters ahead of Kirishima and Jiro, who seemed to be discussing just that. They spoke in hushed whispers, glancing towards him every couple of minutes. Then there was Izuku, right at the back, kicking dirt by himself. They looked like one highly dysfunctional family, which seemed to irritate Izuku just as much as it was pissing off Kirishima, if the twitch in the redhead's eye was anything to go by. He promised Kirishima that they were going to get along, so that this hike can be fun for everyone. But that can't happen while frustration was rolling off Bakugo in waves, polluting the air around them. A dumb idea pops into Izuku's brain, like they often do. It planted in his brain like a root he won't be able to properly dig out. He doesn't actually know why Katsuki hates him so much. He just sorta started being mean to him out of nowhere. Even though Izuku quickly learned that he was just like that, he was still curious why he decided to annoy Izuku specifically. I just want to talk it out. Should be easy, right? Hey, wait up! Izuku calls out before his body can fully catch up to his brain. His walk turns into a jog as he brushes past Kirishima and Jiro. They look at him with wary eyes. They probably know how badly this will end. The blonde turns his head slightly to look at him, his eyes sharp. Izuku is shocked to find out that there's not a look of irritation on his features, but instead, a smirk. Like he was waiting for a fight. This is interesting. It's a look he's never seen on Katsuki's face before, but it's definitely not out of character. Something inside Izuku's stomach shifts quietly at the thought. You think you can catch me, Deku? Izuku's heart pounds wildly in his ears as Katsuki takes off, ducking into the bushes and away from the trail, right into the forest. What the? Izuku doesn't even have time to think, time to talk or work anything out, because as usual when it comes to competition, his body moves before his mind does. Ignoring Jiro and Kirishima's confused yells for them to come back and shouted questions, Izuku chases after him, dropping the bag that was slung across his shoulder, hoping that Jiro or Kirishima would so kindly grab that for him, and ducking under the trees, right at Katsuki's heels. Izuku dodges low branches, struggling to keep up with the raging drummer ahead of him. At every step, his feet threaten to trip over themselves on the uneven soil beneath them, but Izuku pushes past it. I need to talk to Bakugo. From somewhere ahead, he can hear Bakugo's sharp and taunting laugh. It motivates Izuku, pushing him to keep chasing. Soon the ache in his legs and the cotton fog steadily growing in his lungs were pushed to the very edge of his mind. Katsuki moves through this forest like he owns it, and a part of Izuku wants to catch him just to prove that he can. So Izuku laughed as well, picking up the pace until he was right behind him, just a little closer, and he could reach out and grab the blonde's gray hoodie. Katsuki makes a break for it, steering left suddenly towards a small creek. Izuku was hot on his tail. They can hear voices now, on the other side of the trees. Izuku briefly wonders if they were closer to the trail again. Before he could dwell on anything too long, he found himself standing at the edge of a raging river, watching Bakugo jump across rocks towards the other side with ease. Something twists in Izuku's gut, sharp and competitive. Izuku never minded losing before, never seemed important. He had tried his best, and that was always a reason to be proud. He used to hate it a lot as a kid, but he had never hated it this much. Only when it's him. He thinks he's untouchable. I'll just show him how stubborn I can be. Izuku tore after him, jumping onto the rock ahead of him. He misjudges just how slippery moss-covered stones could be and lands awkwardly. He can't give up, though. Not yet. Izuku quickly scrambles across the stream, trying to keep up. He runs blindly after that mop of blonde hair, stumbling into side paths neither would have known existed otherwise, making up their own adventure as they go. Katsuki only hesitates for a split second once they make it back onto the trail. Ahead of them is a long but shallow mud pit, most likely due to the heavy rain this week. Even though they are definitely way ahead of the others, Bakugo wastes little time before sprinting across the dirt. He wants to win. Izuku cringes slightly but follows after, still refusing to give up. The mud squelches and slips beneath their feet. Katsuki pauses only for a moment to flick mud in Izuku's direction. Izuku yelps and slips only slightly as a splatter of mud hits his face. Katsuki howls in amusement as Izuku quickly wipes his sleeves over the mess. "You asshole!" Izuku yells angrily before bending down to fling a fistful of mud at Katsuki's stupidly smug face. It hits him square in the back. Bullseye. This predictably catches the other off guard. "Hey, you bastard!" Katsuki retorts, turning around this time to fling a handful of dirt in his direction. Katsuki grins when it hits Izuku's shoulder. Sunlight glints off his hair, and it's so unfair. I'm supposed to be annoyed, but it's hard to be mad at someone so radiant. Izuku's playful glare softened into something he won't admit and the other was too cowardly to address. The mud is sticky, but so is he. If the dirt sticking to his clothes was anything to go by. Every step was a reminder that I'm never getting ahead. Stupid, pretty blondes. "What's the matter, Deku? Getting tired already?" Bakugo boasts, obnoxiously. Izuku feels his eyes narrow. Even while he's mocking him, Izuku just can't stop paying attention. Eyeing him with curiosity disguises indignation. I hate that. "I could go all day, Katsuki." Izuku taunts right back, grinning at the exasperated look the other gives him. Bakugo takes off back down the trail, the former right behind him. Further down the trail, the path opens up to more bridges and places to cross over. Izuku and Katsuki chase each other over rocks and overgrown bushes, neither keen to let the other win the invisible race. There is a large branch covering the path, and he jumps over the fallen log like it's nothing, and Izuku's pride takes a hit with every leap. Soon, they find themselves at the shore of a larger river than the first. The water this time coming up to Katsuki's knees as he wades in. The creek twists and turns like him, unpredictable, fast, and impossible to pin down. The river pushes past Izuku's knees and he doesn't even notice because Katsuki is still in front of him, laughing like the world is theirs to conquer. Sunlight hits the river just right and he swears it's laughing with him, daring Izuku to catch up. Katsuki's grin is ridiculous, annoying, somehow perfect for pissing Izuku off. Izuku leans down, shoving his mud-stained hands into the gushing stream. He lifts his arms up sharply, sending a splash of water straight into Katsuki's stomach. The blonde laughs, but somehow glares at the same time, directing his own wave of revenge back towards the smug green-haired boy. Every splash he aims in Izuku's direction feels like a challenge, one he's apparently stupid enough to take. His laughter is sharper than the rocks underfoot, and somehow sweeter than it should be. Even when he's mocking me, I can't stop smiling. It's like a grin is constantly threatening to split my face, but I'll never admit that out loud. The creek's water is freezing, but somehow it doesn't matter. All I can think about is catching the laughing boy. Every splash he makes is a challenge thrown at their feet, daring him to retaliate. Katsuki tried to escape the water by climbing onto a nearby stone. His relief was short-lived by Izuku running over and pushing him off of it, sending the other tumbling into the water. Now, it's Izuku's turn to run. He runs far, far away from the angry man behind him. Laughter bubbles from him as he leaps out of the water, dashing off through the trees. His pant legs are soaked and heavy, weighing him down as he runs. Perhaps that's why Katsuki caught up so quickly. Izuku barely escapes his grasp, picking up the pace as he runs over another bridge, the creek that they had been in previously splashing beneath the old creaky wood. "Too slow, loser!" Izuku taunts like a child, but apparently that's all Katsuki needs to infuriate him even more. Even in rivalry, there's a rhythm they've never had before, a heartbeat that only exists when they are running side by side. Every time Katsuki tries to get ahead, he has to push harder. Izuku can't lose, not to him. He's a pain, a nuisance, and yet the only reason why this hike isn't boring. Katsuki pushes ahead until they're side by side. Izuku tries to shove Katsuki to the side, but he ends up taking it as a challenge. They push back and forth until they reach yet another creek. Izuku's starting to wonder if this was just one big river, flowing through the entire trail. Although, this one is way skinnier than the others. Running over rocks and through streams, he's grinning like he doesn't care. That drives Izuku crazy. They leap from stone to stone, racing like children, and for the first time, both of them forget why they hate the other at all. There's a thrill in chasing him, a spark I didn't know I was missing until now. Soon, the trail starts to incline and wrap around the mountain. The pair slow down for the first time in miles, grinning brightly and teasing the other. Izuku's throat suddenly feels like sandpaper as he turns around to grab his drink bottle out of his bag before realizing he dropped it a while back. Shit. From his side, Katsuki grumbles something about him being a forgetful shitty nerd, and kindly offers him a sip of his drink bottle. That's a bit of a stretch. He really just hit Izuku over the head with it before shoving it into his hands. Don't drink it all, Katsuki warns. Fat ass. He adds, just to be a dick, smirking smugly from the corner of his eyes. You're such a gentleman, Katsuki. Izuku grumbles back, sarcasm coating his tongue while he unscrews the bottle lid. He then proceeds to down half the bottle in one go. You can feel velvet eyes prickling his skin as he drinks, and when he finishes, he turns to find Katsuki staring at him with a kind of intensity he hadn't before. Izuku's breath catches in his throat for a split second before Katsuki snaps his gaze away angrily. He snatches the drink bottle from Izuku's clammy hands, putting the lid back on. I told you not to drink at all. One rule, you dumb fuck. Katsuki grumbles at him, and Izuku just laughs awkwardly, clearing his throat and looking at the hill ahead. Right, sorry. Now I'm gonna be all out of water by the time we get to the top. I said I was sorry. Not good enough, Daegu. The next time we come across a creek, I'll refill it for you, okay? Izuku and Katsuki reach the top. Well, eventually. Towards the end of the hike, their track had started to transition from a forest and bushwalk to a full-force mountain climb, from trees to dry rocks threatening to crumble beneath their feet, from steep hills that made the sweat running down their necks feel like a warning, to arguing about who got the last couple drops of water. To say they were tired when they finally rounded the corner, seeing the resting point at the top was an understatement. Not to mention the mud and water soaking their clothes, squelching and rubbing against their skin with every sudden movement. Safe to say, both were ready to rest the second they reached the outlook. The whole time I kept thinking I had finally gained control, only for him to keep forcing me to push even harder. He brings something out that Izuku hadn't done in a long time. Competition. A challenge. That's what this is. A challenge hidden in fierce red eyes and smug grins. The excitement sets every nerve in Izuku's body on fire. His mind blanks. Never in his life has his mind gone static except for when they're competing. An alcoholic to drugs is like Izuku to rivalry. It's an addiction, one that might destroy him from the inside out. Finally, they stumbled over the last couple of bushes towards the end. A breath caught in Izuku's throat once his eyes landed on the beautiful landscape. At the top of the hill was a cafe. A sign above it said it was called The Hungry Hiker. Ironic, right? On a park bench nearby sat Kirishima and Jiro, enjoying a sandwich and a steaming cup of coffee. They were waving them over, but that wasn't what caught Izuku's eye. No, it was the view. The view from the top of the hill was gorgeous. Behind the cafe was a lookout where a bunch of tourists and couples were taking photos of the breathtaking sight of a mountain range. Without thinking, Izuku grabbed Katsuki's hand, purposely ignoring the way the other boy tensed in his grasp but didn't shake him off. Izuku led them through the crowd of people taking pictures, towards the very edge of the glass barrier, the only thing keeping the world from the vast wonders below. Wow, he murmured, all prominent in his voice. They were both covered in mud, soaked to the bone, and yet he doesn't want their chase to end. Running through the forest, splashing each other with water, acting like carefree children, had been the most fun Izuku had ever had in his life, and he was 99% sure Katsuki would never want to hang out with him again after this. So, Izuku took in the moment for as long as he could, his eyes wide as he tried to commit this image to his memory for the rest of his life, burn it into the back of his eyes if he must. Speaking of eyes, the feeling that someone was watching him came back again. He turned to find Katsuki looking at him with an annoyed expression. Classic Bakugo. You know, Izuku spoke up suddenly, surprising even him. He felt the other boy jolt beside him. I never really liked losing. It didn't ever really sit well with me, but I'll admit, it's fun now. He looked over at Katsuki, waiting for his response. The other was already looking at him with those same eyes as before. He didn't say anything immediately, but Izuku fidgeted under his gaze. Come on, nerd. Want to say hi to the others. He grunted eventually, roughly leading the pair back towards where their friends sat. Izuku didn't mind. He had said what he wanted to say anyways. Kirishima's eyes went comically wide when he saw Izuku and Katsuki walking up to their table. He had even put down a sandwich to cover his mouth to stop himself from bursting into laughter. Izuku hadn't looked in the mirror for a while, but he could guess it wasn't good. Hey guys. Izuku laughed awkwardly, scratching the back of his neck until Jiro spoke up, seemingly saying the words Kirishima couldn't bring himself to over his laughter. Jesus, you two, you look like absolute shit. Jiro chuckled, moving over in her seat to make room for one of them to sit down next to her. That seemed to jolt Kirishima out of his amusement, because a moment later he made room for them as well. Yeah, you do look like you just rolled around in a mud pit while pretending to be pigs. Katsuki softed beside him, suddenly making Izuku very aware of his hand holding his. You fucking asshole, we aren't that bad. Izuku's stomach felt like he had just bungee jumped off of a tower. He clumsily dropped the other's hand, turning his face away to hide the heat crawling up his neck. Shoving his hand back into his pockets, he moved to sit beside Jiro, who did nothing but give him a knowing smirk. Asshole. Izuku glanced up to see if Katsuki had sensed the loss of contact, but he was too busy having a very heated argument with Eijiro to notice anything. A shoulder bumped into his. Come on, Jiro whispered. I'll get you something to eat. Izuku nodded, accepting the invitation gratefully. After climbing up that mountain, running through a forest, and arguing with Bakugo for like 3/4 of the time, he hadn't realized how hungry he was. The cafe was warm, despite being outside. Jiro led Izuku over to the counter to pick something. He ended up just ordering a sandwich and a hot chocolate. What? I'm a simple guy. The mountain cafe smelled like freshly baked pastries and chocolate muffins. Izuku smiled as soon as they entered. Different baked goods lined the counters, each with labels behind thick glass. The cafe was rather busy, so they were pretty squished amongst the other customers. His eyes lit up when he saw a tray full of multicolored cupcakes in the middle of the chaos. He could really go for a red velvet cupcake right about now, so he nudged Jiro aside and pointed to the cupcakes. She grinned and ordered 2 for the both of them, along with an iced tea for Izuku. The 2 of them stood to the side, waiting for his name to be called. Chocolate was his favorite flavor, although he always went for red velvet if it was there. Just something about the color always made him nostalgic and joyful. Maybe because it was his mom's favorite. Her living room had always had the comfiest red cushions. She would always make him a white chocolate and red velvet cake every year for his birthday. Or maybe because it reminded him of Christmas. The pretty lights and funny Santa hats. He could eat a dozen of Ochako's red velvet cupcakes. Easy. After they had gotten his food, they walked back towards the Outlook. Jiro claimed that she promised Mina some pictures, but Izuku knew she was going to take some for herself anyway, even after she insisted that she wasn't a sentimental type of person. Izuku wasn't complaining, though. He too wanted to take some. Maybe frame a couple for his apartment, since it's pretty boring with just some random artwork he found in an antique store hanging on his walls. None with him in it, though. He's like 99.99% sure he looks horrendous at the moment. Perhaps it's because he is self-aware. Perhaps it was the dirty looks he got from strangers, or perhaps it was the fact that his friends outright said it to his face. But it's an educated guess why. After taking so many photos that Izuku's phone storage was full, they walked back to the table and heard a snippet of Kirishima and Katsuki's conversation that made Izuku smile even wider. Come on, bro, you were smiling! Kirishima teased, clearly trying to get Bakugo to admit he had something so disgraceful as fun. How horrid. Katsuki huffs, immediately defensive. Shut up, I was laughing at him, not with him. But he can't hide the tiny tug upwards of his lips, and Izuku grins. Katsuki looks over towards them, and their eyes meet for a split second before both turn away. Izuku's heart skips a beat. They both know he had just as much fun as Izuku, except he won't admit it, and neither will Izuku. Somewhere throughout the day, their repulsion of one another had turned and morphed into something entirely new. A twisted sense of competitiveness and rivalry that neither was quite sure what to do with. So they didn't address it at all. Problem fixed? Maybe. It was 5:30 before they decided to make the trek back down the mountain. But something was different this time. This time, Kirishima and Jiro were in front, talking loudly about the different types of birds they could see. Izuku strolled idly behind them, eyes trained on the passing trees, as though hoping one would do something interesting. Anything to get his mind off the boy walking beside him. Izuku didn't know if anything had changed, but judging by the way Bakugo was ignoring him, he highly doubted it. Izuku really wished he knew what the blonde was thinking about right now. He was probably embarrassed. Oh God, what if he made fun of him? Izuku wanted the ground to swallow him whole, not leaving a trace of his misery on this earth. God, Deku, I can hear your thoughts from here. A gruff voice beside him huffed, cutting through Izuku's thoughts like a knife. He glanced up to see Katsuki looking at him out of the corner of his eye, suspicion evident in his eyes, making Izuku sigh. Sorry, he mumbled, looking away. Whatever. Katsuki rolled his eyes, a scowl tightening his lips as he kept his gaze forward. Izuku watched as Katsuki hastily shoved 2 earbuds in his ears, clearly trying to forget about his entire presence. Izuku frowned. He could try. You see, Izuku had always been extremely stubborn. Just ask his mom, or his middle school teachers. He was very competitive back then, doing everything in his power to win and be the best. He wasn't like that anymore, obviously. After meeting his best friends, Ochako, Shoto, and Tenya in high school really settled him down. They weren't the competitive type. They were peaceful and calm with little to no drama. He had definitely made them uncomfortable with his extreme behaviors and annoying pride. He dialed himself back a little, not to fit in or be liked, just to be a good friend. He desperately needed friends back then. He couldn't afford to drive anyone else away. But somehow, Katsuki brought it out of him again. The intense desire to win and compete, to fight or be fought. Every conversation with him was a struggle, and maybe that was exactly what Izuku needed. He was never the one for the peaceful life anyways. Look at his job, for example. He was sure they could be really good friends if Katsuki wasn't just so goddamn brash. Izuku was determined to befriend Katsuki Bakugo, whether the asshole liked it or not. He needed to fix things, however they went wrong. Bakugo grumbled and reluctantly took out one earbud, glaring down at him with annoyance. Izuku looked up at the other man with that stubborn look in his eyes, fingers still raised from where he tapped Katsuki's shoulder. What are you listening to? Izuku asks, ready to pull so many strings to keep this conversation going. AC/DC. Katsuki rumbled in response, already looking done with life. This was something Izuku could work with. To be honest, he fully expected him not to answer. Katsuki was into rock and roll, not completely surprising. Let me guess, TNT? Izuku grins cheekily, chuckling at his own joke. It seems the pun quite didn't get it. No, the fuck? I don't know, this song seems like it'd fit you. The blonde clenches his jaw, clicking his tongue and looking away from him. It seems he's been insulted. It's not an impressive accomplishment these days. Can I listen? He tries, giving the other boy a hopeful smile. Katsuki just rolls his eyes before tossing Izuku the other earbud, making him jolt in surprise. He grins down at the device in his palms before putting it in his ear. Brian Johnson's voice smothers his ear, and Izuku can't help but nod along to the song. Katsuki scoffs at him, shoving his hands once again in his pockets, and starts walking a little way away from Izuku. Izuku laughs at the other boy's clear embarrassment at being seen with him. Let me put my love into you, babe. Let me put my love on the line. Let me put my love into you, babe. Let me cut your cake with my knife. Oh. Izuku was laughing at Bakugo's clear desperation to get away from him when he feels it. That familiar, subtle, soft, invisible prickle against his ear. The hair on the back of his neck stands up like an electric shock. Izuku stops laughing immediately, his entire body freezing, and his mind starts going into overdrive. He knows that feeling. It followed him for 5 years, tormenting his body's every waking thought. But that's impossible. He hates hikes. The real reason Izuku had never been on one before. Izuku spins around so fast he thought his head was going to pop off. Adrenaline mixed with dread and fear all swished around in his stomach like a storm. Where is he? His eyes scan the surrounding trees frantically, trying to spot the familiar tuft of black hair. No. It has to be paranoia. It just has to be. Deku. A mildly confused voice comes into peripheral. Izuku blinks, eyes going watery. He was just there. He could have sworn, I must be dehydrated. There's no way Shindo would follow me up here. I doubt he even knows where I am, nor cares. Yeah? Izuku robotically smiles, not quite reaching his eyes. Sorry, I thought I saw an animal or something. Kotsky narrows his eyes slightly, clearly suspicious but deciding he evidently doesn't give a shit. Whatever. They keep walking, but Izuku can't help but look behind them every couple of minutes. An animal. It was just an animal. Izuku hums along to whatever old rock songs Kotsky has on his playlist, not quite able to shake off the feeling that something was following them. Twigs crunched beneath his feet, echoing in the dimly lit forest. The sun was hovering just above the horizon, bathing the sky in gold and magenta. Once they reached the car park, the nervous jitters that seemed to have made home in his chest settled, making home far in the back of his mind. Popping the earbud out of his ear, he gives it back to Kotsky. They met each other's eyes. Izuku smiled. Kotsky had grimaced but didn't look away. Progress! Jiro gestured to Izuku that she was ready to go, and he nodded in return. After hugging Kirishima goodbye, neither daring nor wanting to hug Bakugo, they walked back in silence to Jiro's silver minivan, letting the hot wind breeze through his hair. A content feeling buzzed in his chest. He opened the door to the passenger seat and the paint smell soured his nose, making his face scrunch up. Jiro chuckled softly at him, starting the car and pulling out of the space. The wheels rolled over uneven concrete, making him jolt in his seat and sent a rumbling feeling through his whole body. Sorry about Bakugo. Jiro starts randomly. He shoots her a confused glance. What does she mean by that? What do you mean? He asks innocently, causing Jiro to give him an exaggerated look over the steering wheel. He knew exactly what she meant. He knew she was about to apologize for her friend's behavior, and that didn't sit right in Izuku's chest. You know as well as I do that he's difficult. He doesn't seem to like you for some reason. Izuku frowns. Wow, thanks. Jiro doesn't laugh. Instead, she sighs, sounding tired. He was worse, you know. Back when we met him, he was an angry little thing. Izuku's laugh is empty. I'm pretty sure he still is. Jiro shakes her head, an unreadable expression taking over her face. No, he's not. Izuku looks at her weirdly. He can't imagine Bakugo being any worse than he is right now. I mean, she clears her throat. Yes, he's grumpy, but not angry. When we met him, he would yell at everything and everyone. He had no real friends, only a couple of kids he'd go around scaring people with. Izuku can imagine, but Jiro just sounds sad. That stops him from making any sarcastic remarks. Kirishima and Mina were persistent in befriending him. She continues, but by then, he'd grown quieter. She said thoughtfully, like she knew the whole truth but wouldn't tell him. It sparked his curiosity only for a moment, but he could see in her eyes that this was a delicate conversation. He made no move to question her. He has gotten remarkably better, no longer physically violent, thinks before he speaks, etc. Her voice carries through the silent car like a devastating speech. Izuku can read between the lines just fine. Be patient with him. He isn't what you think he is what she's trying to say. I can tell that you're a good friend, Jiro. He starts, forcing his voice to remain even. He might not partially like Bakugo, but he can see where she's coming from. And I don't think he's a bad person. He lies. But sometimes he's just so infuriating, and I just don't understand him. Jiro nods, spinning the steering wheel in her hands. I know. I don't know why he's like that to you, but trust me, he'll warm up eventually. Give him time. Izuku doesn't know how much time Kotsky will need for that stick to come out of his ass. And really, he doesn't want to find out. But then again, he needs to fix whatever bent between them. He wants to be friends, even if Bakugo's stubbornness drew him to insanity. Okay. He exhales deeply. After a moment, speaking up again. Music? Jiro nods, handing him her phone. Izuku smirks before he clicks the song. Jiro reacts immediately as soon as that familiar guitar solo starts, banging her head on the steering wheel at the red light. She groans as Izuku laughs. We are not listening to my songs, she complains, making Izuku laugh harder. What? You're a good singer. He manages through his oncoming giggles. Jiro groans again, cringing as her own voice comes through the car speaker. Izuku likes the song Looking Up. He can just hear how proud they were, just becoming one of the top bands at the time. He grins as she starts to mumble along the words. After digging deeper into some of Paramore's songs, he came to discover that this one was his favorite. I'm always wrong, but you're never right. Oh, you're never right. Honestly, can you believe we cross the world while it's asleep? I'll never trade it, 'cause I've always wanted this, and it's not a dream anymore. No, it's not a dream anymore. It's worth fighting for. Alright, we have finally reached the end of chapter 5. Yes, that is only chapter 5. This audio, before editing it or anything, it is right at about an hour and 7 minutes. I'm so sorry that you guys had to listen to me sing. I feel bad for you. It's not it. It's not it at all. But anyways, remember to eat, sleep, drink your water, and take your meds. And when you sleep, go to bed at a reasonable time. You guys can't clown on me because it's 8:30 p.m. There's still light out, probably. Anyways, remember kids, be do, and crime gay.